Want to go far in business and in life? You can't do it alone. The secret is expanding your network of personal relationships, building friendships, connecting on an intimate level, away from the office, over a coffee or cocktail. Welcome to All In with the real Nate Payo. The show that asks what happens when you go all in and leverage the power of your network of personal relationships.
Hello. Welcome to the All In podcast with Nate Payo. I am, of course, your host, Nate Payo. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Mark Tinsley. Welcome to the show, Mark. How are you?
Good to be here, Nate. Thank you for having me.
So, Mark has this really long bio. I usually try to introduce people about what their accomplishments are. But one thing, I think you found a real niche. Like, you're the first person that I've seen that really says, hey, I'm going to be, now I'm losing my place of where it was at, but you're the only person that can officiate a marriage, fly a plane, and certify the diamond, as well as play the musical instruments in one spot. So speaking of niches, that's about as niche-y as you can get.
Maybe. I actually had that bio written by somebody else, and I thought that was funny. So what she wrote there, so I left that in. But
can you do it all at once? Could you fly the plane while the marriage is going on in the airplane?
I guess technically you could. I don't know if the Federal Aviation Administration would want me officiating a marriage while flying a plane, but I think I could do it.
Yeah. So Mark's more than, I think, just that. Mark's also got a website, Living Life on Purpose, with a podcast, guest speaker, tons of stuff going on. So, Mark, what kind of led you to getting going with this Life on Purpose podcast?
Well, honestly, it's probably started with my own life. I went for years, especially my 20s and 30s, just not really knowing where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do. I won't say I was purposeless, but I was definitely not driving towards any particular goal. As you can see in my resume, I tell people, and I'm serious when I say this, a lot of that stuff was just me searching. Now, it's been cool to have some of those things in my background, to have learned so much stuff, but honestly, I was just wandering around, wondering what my purpose and what I was meant to be doing in this world. And so as I started to resolve what my purpose in life is, what I'm here to do, what I'm supposed to be all in on, then, I started thinking, wow, how can I help other people not go through the struggles, 15, 20 years of struggles that I went through, trying to figure out who they are and what they want to do. And that's how it got started.
That's kind of cool way of describing it, because I relate a lot to that. Like, I've felt in my past, like I had a calling to do a bit more, but I wasn't sure what it was. It's like, okay, well, I mean, my path didn't diverge into a lot of different things like yours did. It kind of followed this career path of, climbing the corporate ladder, doing what's next. Right. And I always felt like it was lacking a little bit of fulfillment in that journey. And that's what led me to do my podcast, and also this journey I'm on of being all in is really, it's going all in on finding my purpose, finding my calling with this idea. Maybe you did this 20 years ago, but like, you're like, hey, I don't know what it is exactly, but I have faith that if I start taking steps towards a certain path, it will reveal itself. I will learn who I am a little bit more. So why not kind of like share the journey for other people to inspire them to kind of like seek out, like, hey, if you're in the same boat, you're like, hey, I feel like I should be doing more. I could be living a better version of myself. I'm not living to my potential.
Right.
I wanted to show people like, hey, we all got to start somewhere. Let's do it. So,
well, I think you were probably a lot like me. I didn't know what I wanted to do exactly, but I knew I didn't want to just sit still and wait. I'd seen people do that in my life, and they never arrived anywhere. So I figured, like you said, just take some steps, do some things, and it would reveal itself along the way. It eventually did. But, like I say, again, I think I can help people maybe resolve that purpose a little sooner in their lives and not have to go through quite as much struggle as I went through.
Yeah, I think that's true. But I mean, you look at what you have as experience. So, and you could say like, oh, well, that was me figuring out who I was. But at the same time, like every one of those experiences ended up shaping who you become.
Sure. Absolutely.
And I relate this a lot in my own life when you go like, hey, if I could have things over in my life, would you do it? And you think about like, usually people say, oh, these bad events in my life, I wish I didn't have to have had go through them. But then you look at, like for me, I go, okay, I have a 3-year-old son and I have a baby on the way and I have a wife. And you say, okay, if I took out some bad points in my life, would I have still met my wife, had my children and all this other things? And the answer is probably no. Like everything led up to that one point to have these blessings in your life. And so I think like all those experiences you have shape who you are, and you become this person that's like has this unique gift of talents, and it's all summarized in one thing. And then that's how, somebody might relate to you for different reasons. Like, hey, you're a pastor. Hey, you're you make guitars. Hey, you fly airplanes. Like, that's something to find people will find relatable about you. And I think that's really big on making connections and building relationships with people, is finding something that's relatable.
Absolutely.
So I got a question for you.
Sure.
How do you feel about the word luck? Do you believe people are lucky?
Yeah, it's an interesting term. We use it a lot in our culture. I don't hear it as much as I did when I was a kid back in the 80s, but I still hear it. I've kind of come to look at it as a term that people sort of use, maybe oftentimes use as an excuse. And I'll explain what I mean. When I hear the word used, I'll say 8 times out of 10, as kind of a swag statistic there. But it's often used in the context of, well, that person's just lucky. Look how lucky that person is. And it's almost offered in the sense of, I won't say bitterness, but sort of envy of the other person. And when I hear that applied to some people, I go, well, yeah, maybe that person was fortunate. Maybe they had some good fortune come their way. Maybe ran into the right person, had an opportunity kind of rise up. But I also think that person grabbed hold of that opportunity, or that person put him or herself in the path of an opportunity, or they worked hard over the years for an opportunity to come up, and then they grasped hold of that opportunity and ran with it. So I'm not a fan of the word luck from a practical standpoint there. I think a lot of folks who appear lucky are oftentimes, not always, but are oftentimes people who have worked hard, have been presented with an opportunity and have grabbed hold, even if they haven't worked hard to get that opportunity, they've grabbed hold of that opportunity and run with it and done something with it. And so it's not necessarily so much luck as it is just initiative, as it were, and work ethic. Also, as a person of faith, I would say, that I believe in my faith tradition that, we're guided and directed in the directions we go, and that things happen, as they say, for a reason. Mm-hmm. And so, and kind of all the stuff you were saying, I don't lament the experiences that I've had in my life or the waywardness that I have. I agree. It made me who I am. I hope I can share some wisdom with people along the way in my Living Life on Purpose ministry. But at the same time, I think luck, again, is sometimes used as an excuse. I think I would rather use the term fortunate, because I think some people, some people are born into fortunate situations. Some people do run into the right people, and those people got it. But I think if we look at all of our lives, we've all had a little fortune and a little misfortune in our lives. But what we do with either one of those, fortune or misfortune, kind of shapes who we are and guides our futures in so much. And
I think that's a fantastic answer. Is like, you're right. A lot of times when the word lucky is used, we it's like, oh, that person got it because they were lucky. So it's like a negative term that we use to essentially judge other people based on what they did. And we rarely know everybody's whole story, their struggle, their challenges, what they did to get where they were going. And you're right. The people that we would say, oh, they're lucky, they have essentially created their own luck. They've created their own opportunities, or they've been aware of the choices they make, and the way they react to the responses. Like you could have the same opportunity presented to you, and you could choose to see it for what it is and go with it, or not. And you could still be considered lucky because the opportunity fell in your lap, but what you do with it determines if you make it a successful opportunity or a wasted opportunity. And I truly believe that.
And I do think some people use the term lucky in more of a colloquial, loose sense, if you will, in the sense they're probably saying what you and I are saying. But I think we have to be careful with the word lucky, because it can send the wrong connotation. Like, hey, this person didn't do anything. They just they fell into, a lucky situation. And I don't think that happens very often, to be honest with you.
So let me ask you, when did you find your purpose, and like, how did you kind of discover that voice and realize that was your calling, and I always think, you remember those things that they probably still have them, but they'd be like at the grocery store when you'd be like leaving, and you drop your quarter, and it's this big funnel, and the thing goes around the circle really, really slow, and then it gets really, really fast, and it just dumps in at the center. I always think of that with like ideas of like, hey, I kind of not sure, I'm kind of like circling, it's getting a little bit clearer, and then whoa, it's focused, and you're off to the races. When did that like happen for you?
Yeah, I guess it's probably started to happen about 10 years ago. Maybe a little more, maybe a little less. I can't remember exactly, but I'll tell you how it happened. I was wandering, I was doing my thing, just running around and taking the next step, trying to figure things out. I would take a job or start down a certain path, and it would go well for a little while, and then things would just start to turn. I was always a good employee, never got fired from a job, but I'd start to feel a little uneasy. This isn't really what I want to do, et cetera, et cetera. And then I'd move to the next thing. But more and more doors started to close for me as I got older. And quite frankly, I got to a point where I would apply for jobs and people would say, well, we're not going to hire you because you don't stay with places more than a year or two. I actually had a guy tell me that. He was like, you sound great, but I just don't want to take the risk. So doors started closing, and other doors started opening, and doors in the ministry started open. First on a part-time basis, and then on a more full-time basis. And then as those doors started to open, more and more of the other doors started to close. I was in higher education for a long time, as you saw on my resume. And when I left higher education, I thought I would move on to another. I was continuing part-time ministry, but in full-time higher education. The problem was I could not get hired anywhere. I had been a dean and everything. I had a beefy resume. And at that point, I had stayed with this university for a while. I mean, obviously, I'd risen to the role of a dean. So I thought I would breeze into another position somewhere. I could not get hired anywhere. There was one community college, I laugh at this all the time, had 8 positions for English teachers. 8 at a community college. And I couldn't even get an interview. And so it was very clear I was not getting back into higher education. But then the doors for full-time ministry opened up, and a larger church opportunity opened up. And it was at that time, probably 3, 4, 5 years ago, that I realized I was definitely being called into ministry. And then as I got into it and started to see some giftedness in certain areas of ministry and some encouragement from people, and then this desire that never waned to do what I'm doing, to help people, to minister, to preach scripture and teach scripture to folks. And to this day, I found my purpose through open doors, closed doors, I guess is the short answer. I mean, I was searching, like you said, I was doing different things, getting a lot of different experiences. But then and when I was 20 years old, the doors were wide open, and then they started to close until finally in my tradition of faith, God led me to this one thing. And I'll be honest with you, I've tried a couple of times to get out of the ministry. One way, trying to get back into higher education because I love to teach. And in another way, I was just sort of testing things. Is this true? And I can, no matter what I do, I send out resumes and whatnot. I don't get interviews, and it's very clear God wants me right here where I am now. So I feel like I found my purpose through kind of circumstance, if you will.
I've been really intrigued with the idea of the calling, of a calling,
right,
for our purpose recently too, and it's just like, for me, I always had like an entrepreneurial spirit, and I would go out and try to start business ideas, and like some were things I really did, and some are just like ideas that lasted for a few hours. And like every time I'd like have a business that I would do and it would fail, I would be like, I'm not doing that again. Like just stick to the 9-to-5 job. Just build your career. It's to show up every day. You're good at it. Yeah. But then like a few months would go by or a few years would go by, and this itch would crawl, like come at me, and I'd be like, I have this idea. And it wasn't, I think recently I discovered it's maybe not the itch to be like there's an itch and I want to solve it. So I would try things to solve that itch, but they weren't the right thing. And so this time I'm like, let's just see where this goes. Like you're going to get pulled in this direction that's going to make sense, and it's going to feel right, and just let the ideas evolve instead of just trying to force an idea into it and try to make something work that's not there, that is either A, not going to be successful, or B, it's gonna fail, and then you're gonna be in the same boat. So I'm kind of like, not this idea of like, hey, I want to be an entrepreneur. It's more like I want to find my calling, I want to find my purpose, which I believe is along the lines of serving people in some sort. So right. I'm trying to figure that out. So I think for anybody that's listening, it's okay to try different things. You just have faith that like the more you do, the more you, like if you sit at home and you sit on the couch, like the chances of you finding what you want to find are less likely than if you start taking steps, open the door, make a choice, you go left, you go right. And the choices you go are going to lead you to people are going to cross your path. They're going to introduce you to ideas. And then that kind of evolves into discovering who you become. And these people don't come into your life by accident. I think, God puts them there, and they're not always for, I guess, your benefit. Like not everybody's like, hey, God put this person here to really make you feel good and about your idea. Sometimes it's like, hey, this is going to be a lesson to learn. That's going to be a painful lesson, but it's going to teach you when the right message comes along to be aware of it.
And I think everybody teaches us something. So even the quote unquote bad people in our lives teach us stuff, and we can learn from them. I mean, I've had a lot of bad leaders in my life, and I've learned a ton from them. And I mean, honestly, one of the things that you said a little bit ago reminded me of a little bit of philosophy that I've applied to my life. And you were talking to your viewers directly, so I would talk to them here on this one too. And that is, and I think you would agree with this, don't be afraid to fail. And I think that's what a lot of people, the reason a lot of people sit on the couch and watch TV all day long, as it were, is because they're afraid to get out there and do something where they might not be successful. And I'm like, you know what? Throw that noodle against the wall. If it sticks, it sticks. If it doesn't, grab another noodle and throw it against another wall. I mean, that's kind of how I did with my life. I'm not saying that I did everything right, and I want to help people do it better than I did. But at the same time, I'm with you. Try things, because you don't know what you're going to like until you think. People. I knew I wanted to be a doctor since I was 3 years old. Well, maybe that some people know that, but I doubt that most people know what they want to do from the time they're young. It takes some experience in life. It takes some experimentation to really know who you are and know what you want to do. So yeah, don't be afraid to fail. I guess that's one.
I love that. I also think of this for me, I like this saying of get to know as fast as you can. Because you're going to hear no a lot. And so when somebody says yes, and you've given them all the the bad too, like all the scary demons in your closet and all that stuff, and they still say yes, then it's like true. So instead of just trying to like coddle the answer to get to a yes and be like, okay, we got to the yes, cool, now let's find out all the stuff you're not happy about. I'm just like, just run out there and go do it, go chase what it is, and throw like all of it out there towards it, and not try to like pretend it's working for you, but just kind of go. And then if it's still sticking, the more, like you said, like I've tried to get out of the ministry. Like I've tried to escape it, go back to her. And it's like, it just keeps pulling you back. It's like, nope, this is where you're meant to be. I think when you challenge your assumptions to get to no quickly, like I want this to be a no, but the answer keeps being a yes, then it's like, okay, I'm on the right path. So that's
I had a friend, a leader, a mentor of mine, who used to say something very similar. He used to say, "Fail fast," is what he would say.
Yes. So tell me a little bit about, like, you do some speaking, you do workshops, you have online courses. If you could say, who is my ideal, not client, but who do I want to work with? Who is my ideal student? Who's going to be the person, like, I feel like I make the biggest impact on their lives that I want to work with?
Well, on a more general level, I would say anyone who's searching for purpose. If you are that guy or gal who's sitting on the couch and just wondering, why is nothing happening for me, and what am I supposed to do with my life? That's my passion. It's my passion to work with those types of folks. I think because of my experiences, however, if I were to hone it down to an avatar, it would be probably the middle-aged man who's searching for purpose. When I say middle-aged, I have a broad range for that. And I'd say anywhere from 30 to 55, would be my ideal avatar male. Now, I'm not excluding the women, but I went through this in finding my purpose in my middle age, and I'm a man. So I can really speak truth, I think, into that person's life. And I think there are a lot of men and women out there in their middle ages. Some people call it a middle age crisis, or whatever you would call it, or that are searching right now and going, what am I doing? Why have I come to the place where I am right now? And where do I go from here? And I'll tell you, I thrive on that person because, again, I'm not telling people the answers. And I want to be very clear on that with what I do with Living Life on Purpose and anything I do in ministry or whatever. I'm not the advice guy. I'm not here saying, oh, let me tell you what you need to do. But I am hopefully a guide and a mentor that can answer questions and speak some truth and hopefully wisdom into particular situations and at least give perspective. I love what you're doing here, Nate, with All In, because I think that's really what people need is not the answer, but just someone who can give perspective and say, here's what I went through. Mm-hmm. Maybe what I went through can help you a little bit. And that's kind of where I am.
I like that. There's two things I want to talk about, the midlife crisis analogy and the idea of, like, you're not the guy with the answers. So when somebody goes like, hey, why should I hire a coach? Like there's two things I see where people, might want to hire a coach. This could be for a business, for a life coach, for just a trainer at the gym. Is one, you're a total rookie at whatever it is you're doing, and you have no skills and no knowledge or anything like that. So you go, I'll just use a personal trainer as an analogy. Like I want to go to the gym, but I don't know what to do. So you hire a personal trainer because they're going to show you, here's the equipment, here's the weights, here's what a program looks like, here's how you do things safely, here's the foundation for it. Okay. And then you become a little bit more competent in it, and you know what to do. So the coach isn't this person that tells you the answers. So they become this person that provides you accountability. They provide you guidance. They provide you an example. But I think most of all is when you become more experienced in it, especially like for you, you're looking for people that are experienced in life, but are trying to figure it out. It's your job is to reach into that person and pull what's already out there and help them discover that. And
I think a coach is an inspiration, hopefully, because when I look at a coach, it's somebody who's been through life, been through something maybe similar to me, or at least something equivalent to what I'm going through. And they've somehow succeeded, somehow done it right, somehow navigated well. And if nothing else, you can look to that person and say, well, if they can do it, I can do it. Because I mean, we're all human beings here. So if I can get through my struggles and find my purpose, then there's no reason why other people can't do that as well. And I think a coach is, a person of inspiration.
The other thing that with the middle-aged analogy, like I look at it this way, like this is probably my journey, but I don't think it's unique in it, is that like you graduate high school and you're like, hey, what do I do? I'm supposed to go get a job, or I'm supposed to go to college. So if I'm not ready to get a job and I can afford to go to college, I go to college and I graduate and get a job. And then it's like, married, kids, family, whatever. And you ride through life doing what you think, and you get to your 40s and you've put in 20 some years in the workforce, and you say, like the old way of looking at it, like I remember when I heard about people having midlife crisis, was like, oh, that guy just, he wants to go buy a red Corvette and, trade his wife in for a model. And it's like, I guess I'm in my midlife crisis time period in life, but I think it's more like, hey, you discover like this idea of like, is my life meaningful? Am I being fulfilled? Am I, doing something that's bigger than me, or am I just chasing goals and tasks that don't matter in the big picture? Am I making a difference that's right with my morals and values? So I think you're right. Like, you want to discover that, because for me, I've started realizing that depression is a real thing, and it impacts the way we live our lives, which can trigger other things with drug and alcohol use and abuse. That's I'm not going to say like addictive, like rock bottom stuff, but just like this version of like, hey, you're drinking a little bit, you're making poorer choices than you could be to living a life where you're like really fulfilled. And I've been in that boat, and I'm just kind of like, hey, maybe there's more. Like, do I want my life to be, this is it, this is, I've peaked and we're riding the downhill thing, or do I want to like start chasing a better version of myself possible? And so to me, it's like, okay, is that a midlife crisis? No, I think maybe it's a midlife awakening, or a sense of discovery of like, hey, I'm here to do more, and I can do more. Like, and it's something I feel like I'm compelled to do. If I can make a difference in a few people's lives, and it steers them in the right direction, then I'm doing my part. Like that's kind of where I see.
I totally agree with you, man. And one of the things that I actually don't like the term midlife crisis, because it has such a negative connotation. I really believe, and one of my bits of philosophy, if you will, is that midlife crisis, I believe, is God's way of redirecting us. We've gotten to a point in our lives where we have experience, we have knowledge, we have know-how, we have wisdom, and we're looking back, as you said, on our lives and going, have I come the path I wanted to come in? Am I going where I want to go? And oftentimes the answer is, no, I'm not going where I want to go, and I want to redirect things. We call that a midlife crisis. And I think I see my role in a small way is grabbing, and I shouldn't say that, interacting with people at that point in their lives, and helping them to see that it is a God thing, and that redirection can be very positive. So instead of going out and buying the Corvette, what if you start a podcast? I'm not saying those are the answers. I'm just saying you help people see, as you said earlier, you pull it out of them. What is it you really want? It's not the Corvette. I'm not putting down Corvettes, by the way, but it's not the Corvette you probably want. It's some kind of fulfillment that you're searching for. So let's find what that is that you're looking for, and let's help you go down that path. I think midlife crises are a positive thing if they're directed in the right way.
It's so true. Like, why wouldn't it be? Like, every like thing I've learned career wise, life wise, business wise, usually the lessons you learn happen from a problem. Like we used to joke, like when I first started my career, like if you were on I was in construction, still in construction. So like you could be on a project that goes really, really smooth and it makes a bunch of money and it's on schedule, on budget, and it's like easy days. And then you have jobs that like the budget was messed up, the schedule's delayed, you got tons of problems. And the thing is like the people on the good job, they got rewarded, but it's just kind of like, it's like luck of the draw almost. Like, so like if you're new in the construction, of course, you know, there's people that are experienced that probably set the project up for success because they had a lot of experience with a lot of bad projects. But the people like me that were just like right out of college, you're on this job and it's like you just think everything's easy and it's all good. And then you go on a bad job and you're like, holy crap. And you're not, you're kind of like, you're on a bad job, you're associated with the bad job, but you learned so much more and your experience is to take and do better or that. So like to have this midlife crisis and say like, hey, I'm not fulfilled. It's not the time to shut down and go like, geez, I guess it's not. So like, you know, most people, you're sitting there thinking like, could I be doing more? And more doesn't have to be like huge. You don't have to be like this, like take something from $0 to $1 billion. It could be just like,
Sure.
could I volunteer in my, you know, community? Could I help some other people do their things better? And it's where you find that like, hey, I'm making a difference in a place that I feel satisfies, you know, my goals and values.
Yeah. So two things people always want in life. I mean, we all want success and we all want legacy. We want to leave positive legacy. So success and legacy. And I totally agree with you, Nate, that success and legacy have many definitions for different people. I mean, success for one person may look like $1 billion in the bank in a big company, Fortune 500 company. Success for somebody else might be, hey, I stop sitting on the couch and I go serve at the food kitchen once a week. I mean, it's just different for everyone else. But if we all drive towards our success, right? If we all take hold of our opportunities, do what we're called to do, find that purpose and drive forward on that purpose, we'll find success, big or small, and we'll all leave a positive legacy on our culture, on our families, etc. And success and legacy. But yeah, I think you're right, man. We got to be careful how we define success because it's different for everyone. And it's different for us at different stages of our lives as well. Maybe one season of my life, success is defined one way, and another season it's defined completely different. I'll give you an example. And then real quick is my grandfather, which people who know me know I talk about my maternal grandfather a lot, but you know, he was successful as he worked for the Virginia Department of Transportation for years and made it to, you know, reasonably high mid-level manager position. But he was very successful at his job. A lot of people relied on him. He was very good at what he did, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Then he retired. Then in the next phase of his life, he built a hardware store business and ended up growing into two pretty large hardware stores in our area. And so he was a successful businessman. So success in that was no longer just being a supervisor and a worker for another organization. Now it was as a business owner. He was successful. Then in another season of his life, he was successful as a grandfather. He mentored me. He mentored my father and his son. He wasn't this big successful businessman. He wasn't this big successful manager. He was a successful grandfather. And so it changes based on our seasons of life.
It does a lot. Okay, got my last question here for you. How do you define all in on an idea and outcome? What is all in mean to you? Or would you tell somebody like, hey, going all in on it? What would you describe that means?
So here's what I kind of did in my life when I decided to go all in. And my all in is a process over the last 5 to 10 years, probably. But when I decided, okay, I'm all in on this purpose, on this life thing, right? I wrote down what my fears were. What are the things that scare me? I wrote those things down, and then I made a conscious choice to fight those things, to stand nose to nose with those fears and just push them aside, or at least push past them. And I have and continue to do things sometimes just because I fear doing it. For example, I decided, I play in a band. I play drums in a band, and I sing in a band. I did that, honestly. I have a desire to play music, but I was scared to death to sing and scared to death to perform music in front of people. But I decided to do it a couple of years ago because I was fearful of it. So I'm going to do this to get over this fear. And now I'm over it. And I've done that with so many different things. So to answer your question, all in, I think, is, once you've defined your purpose, once you know where you're going, what direction you want to go in, is listing out those fears and then resolving not to let those stop you. Mm-hmm. If you can push past your fears, I think largely you're all in, because that's what holds so many people back.
Yeah.
When you think about why didn't you do for years the things that you wanted to do, you were talking about earlier? Probably a large part of that was fear. You didn't know what the future was going to look like, if you were going to be successful, if you were going to be able to do it, if people were going to laugh at you, whatever. They were fears. But once you decided to push past those fears, look at it. Now you're doing these things. You got this great podcast, and you're doing things with your life that you want to do now because you're not fearful. I mean, you might still have fear, but you have courage as well.
I think you're right. It's like the fear of overcoming these obstacles. And like, for me, at least, a lot of these were just the beliefs I told myself, like, like, you're not good enough to do that. That's somebody else that can be that person. Like, you're no expert. Like, they're not fears to me. Like, oh, what if you do that and it doesn't succeed? Like, how are you going to pay for your mortgage? How are you going to put food on the table? Like, to me, like, every one of the fears that I really had, when it really boiled down to it, was a limiting belief that had something to do with self-doubt. And so I've been in this boat, like, hey, if it feels uncomfortable, like, we're going to do it. And we're going to do it for a long enough period of time that it's okay. It's not the easy way out. So, like, let's say this is the example, like, I wanted a podcast. So I wanted to say, you need to do it for like at least a year. And the reason why I said I have to do it for at least a year is because if I did it for a little bit and I said, oh, it's not really what I expected it to be, and I didn't really have as much fun with it as I thought, and I just gave up, and then I'd say, okay, did I give up because I really didn't like it, or did I give up because I didn't like feeling uncomfortable with it, and so I gave up too soon? But if I get enough time in it and I say, okay, yeah, there's some stuff I liked, some stuff I didn't like, but I really found out, maybe I decide, like, I like being guest on podcast, but I don't like hosting the podcast, or something to that effect. Like, at least I made a conscious decision that I didn't give up because of fear and challenges. And if I didn't have that mindset, I probably would have given up early, because when I first started, I knew things were going to go wrong, but the things I thought would go wrong, it wasn't those. It was like a bunch of logistics stuff. Like, I couldn't get audio to work. I couldn't get like coordination of schedules to work. The premise that I started with of meeting in person didn't work. And I could have easily just said, it wasn't meant to be. This is too much work. It's too difficult to get it going. So I'm going to give up. And so you're right. Like, you have to just say, hey, I'm going to face these fears regardless, and do it. And then, like, what I've found is, like, most of the stuff I build up is like, it's this, what would other people think if I did this? And what I've found is nobody cares. Like, I mean, they do care, but not like if I did this for a while and then I quit, would people think I'm a quitter? No, or if they do, like, it's not really impacting how I live my life. You're right. You just got to kind of face these challenges and overcome them. And I think you find out that a lot of them are just made up in your mind, and they could be defeated pretty easily.
And I think you're right. It's so many of the challenges and fears that we have end up not being the things that we should have feared or seen as challenges anyway. I mean, what I mean is I have my own podcast, and I've a little radio station, an internet radio station that I run, and, my ministry and all these things. And when I started each one of these things, I had this conception of what my challenges were going to be and what the things were going to be that were really going to keep me in a state of anxiety. But those things were the easy things at the end of They were never the issue. It was always something else that I would never anticipate it. So my point in saying that is you just got to try things because you just never know. And oh, by the way, if we're going to find success and legacy, then we're going to have to face our challenges. We're going to get through some hard times and go through some obstacles and over and around some obstacles because that's just life. The only way to avoid challenges is to be that person who sits on the couch and watches TV all day long or does nothing. And guess what? You're going to be presented with challenges doing that as well. And it's going to be purposelessness, frustration, depression. Then you're going to face some real challenges. So get out there and do stuff. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I've had a fabulous time chatting with you about finding purpose, life, midlife crises, everything. We've had a lot of topics. So somebody wants to find out more. They want to discover their life, living it on purpose. They want to get in touch with you. They want to find your books. Where should they go?
So my website is www.livinglifeonpurposetoday.com. So that's livinglifeonpurposetoday.com. Also, as I mentioned a minute ago, I have an internet radio station where we play Christian and classic rock and roll. That's called The Crock Radio. The Crock spelled CROCK. So thecrockradio.com. And I post some of my podcasts and things like that there as well.
Awesome. Well, I'll put all that in the show notes so people can get in chat with you and wish you well. I think you're going to, make a difference in a lot of people's lives. And I think you have a lot to offer. So anybody that's listening, please go check out that Martin.
Thanks, Nate. And I really appreciate the opportunity to be on your show. When I saw your show description, just to plug you a little bit, I saw your show description. I was like, man, that's a guy I want to talk to. I mean, somebody that's just said, you know what, I've held myself back all these years. I'm taking the initiative and I'm going to run with it. I love that, man, because I think you and I have the same heart song there.
All right. Appreciate it. Thank you so much for the kind words too. Yeah. Have a good one.
You too.
Make sure to visit our website, therealnatepeo.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, so you'll never miss an episode of All In. While you're at it, if you found value, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if simply tell 2 friends about the show. Looking to connect? You can find Nate Peo on LinkedIn or Instagram.